All right. Welcome to Live from My Drum Room and a special industry spotlight episode. My guest is my old friend of 40 years, legend and titan of the drum industry, Rick Drumm. Rick is best known for his 33 years working in the drum industry, holding senior positions at Remo, Vic Firth, and D'Addario. D'Addario, the parent company of Evans and Promark. In 2014, Rick started Peak Growth Solutions, corporate business coaching and services. Rick is also an accomplished drummer, and it's an honor to have him here with me today. So please welcome my good friend, Rick Drumm, to Live from My Drum Room.
Hey, John.
Hey, Rick. Great to see you, buddy.
Great to see you. And I just have one question regarding Ian. Um, Ian, you're not watching this while you're taxiing your Airbus or any chance, because it is going to be recorded. You could watch it later if you need to.
That's a really good question. I sure hope not. That's something that I might try, but I don't think Ian Palmer would be while he's driving his Virgin Airbus aeroplane, as he likes to call it. I hope he's not watching us. Uh, oh, it's great to see you, Rick.
You too,
Uh,
John.
I was going to say from right here in good old Massachusetts. You're from Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
We're both native Massachusetts guys, and I used to think you were the biggest thing to come out of Springfield ever, but I've learned that your cousin is also from Springfield, the great Mike Scully, and he may have just maybe one upped you just a little bit in terms of
And I'm not happy about that, John. I've
for
met
every.
several times.
I just want to take a moment and let everybody know Rick's cousin is, if you don't know who Mike Scully is, and I made a note of it just to mention it because you introduced me to him years ago, and I'm such a big fan. But he's a writer, TV producer, writes for The Simpsons, producer, showrunner, um, very successful guy in Hollywood, and like Rick, a very humble guy. And I'll let you talk in a second, Rick, but I'll never forget years ago at the NAM show, we used to say, next time my cousin's around, I'll make sure you get to meet him. And it was a typical NAM show situation. And we're all 100 people deep at the booth. And I see you kind of out of the corner of my eye standing with someone, and you're being very patient, and he was being very patient. And I'm trying to break free to come over and see you. I had no idea who that was with you. And then I felt so bad because I did finally make it over to see you, and you said, "John, this is my cousin Mike Scully. I just want to introduce you." I'm like, "Oh man, I'm sorry to make you wait." But anyway, he was a good
Well,
sport.
John, he's a hobby drummer. Maybe you want to have him on the show sometime. He's got better stories than I do.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know he was a hobby drummer.
Yeah. He was my first drum student.
Wow. Okay. Well, Rick, let's start. Let's go back a few years to I mean, you started off as a drummer. We talked about you being from Springfield, and right. When did you start playing?
I started playing drums when I was 8. I started on
Oh,
trumpet
okay.
when I was 4. I was walking a fence, not the best decision I ever made, and I fell off the fence and broke my arm. And so my father was actually when the Beatles were hitting, and so we were into the Beatles, and he thought maybe playing the drums would help rehabilitate my arm, and it did. And then I saw that there was really no future for me as a trumpet player. And I think he saw that too. And so he encouraged me to switch over to the drums.
He had good foresight. Well, the drums worked out pretty well for you, Rick. I have to say it all.
So, I studied in Springfield with a drum teacher by the name of Dominic Deaney, who taught at my father's music store. And I grew up inside that music store. And then, and actually, my brothers and sisters were all involved in music as well. My sister Eileen's a very accomplished pianist. My brother Rob, who's no longer with us, was an awesome reed player, saxophone. And my youngest brother Ron, who is your age, John,
Young guy.
he kind of picked up the drums a little bit, and but he just retired from Disney World. And so he didn't get into music, but for some reason he's got more money than any of us. But I digress.
That's how it goes. Yeah. Oh man. Well, that's that old joke about the jazz musician who had $1 million, started with 2 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you played all, as a youngster all through. Did you play in bands? Must have played in bands through high school and all
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
I started playing professionally when I was 13. I started playing circuses and rodeos when I was 14, like the Shriner Circus and the rodeos
Yeah.
that
Okay.
were coming, through town over at the Eastern States Exposition over in West Springfield. And I started studying with Ed Shaughnessy when I was a freshman in high school, and I won a National Endowment for the Arts grant that I got in that summer between 8th grade and 9th grade. And then
Yeah.
so I studied with Ed for 2.5 years, which was a great experience because my lesson was scheduled for like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I took the bus down from Springfield to Manhattan, and then take my lesson. And then after my lesson, I walk over to NBC with Ed, sat down behind him. So every other week, I was at the Tonight Show for the band rehearsal. They were going through whatever acts, musical acts they're going to have that night. And then the band was, I'm sitting right behind Clark Terry, was a regular sub on the band, Snooky Young, and Richard Davis on bass, and of course Doc Severinsen and Tommy Newsom, and Arnie Lawrence was another great saxophone player in the section. And so they got to see this kid that had a bad case of acne every other week. So I kind of stood out, and they got to know my name. Oh, there's the acne kid. And then, they felt bad for me. Come over, talk to me.
Wow. No, I knew you knew Ed. I guess I didn't know how far back you guys went, and how deep that relationship was. So this, of course, is when the Tonight Show was still in New York, what you were talking about, and then they moved to LA. The show goes out to LA, and then
Yes, I studied with Santiago. So
right.
I went down the end of the hall. So this hallway of drum teachers was right above Henry Adler's Music on West 46th Street.
Okay.
And so you go up, and it was really interesting because there was just one dark hallway with one bare light bulb with a chair underneath it. It looked like maybe the KGB was using it during off hours. So, but
Yeah.
I go to the left, and I studied mallets with Doug Allen, who co-wrote the Phil Krause books, and then I take my lesson with Ed. But right next to Ed was Joe Casadas,
Yeah.
and then next to Joe Casadas was Sandy Feldstein. And then at the end of the hall was Santiago, and Saul Goodman had Sandy's studio before he left, and then Sandy grabbed it.
Man, incredible times, when you think about, I mean, all those people that you could study with, like, in one building, just incredible.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
was. And, this is long before Drummers Collective or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a great spot to go. And again, great experiences. So many great memories. I remember like this one time with Santiago. I called Sonny like the night before my lesson. I had the flu, and I had like 102-degree temperature. And so Sonny said, so I said, Sonny, I gotta cancel tomorrow. I said, Rick, let me ask you a question. So are you planning to make music performance your life? I said, yes, Sonny. He said, so, when are you expecting to be married and maybe have a family? I said, yes, Sonny. So your only way of making money is when you show up for the gig and get paid, right? I said, yes. He said, great. See you tomorrow.
Now we know where Tommy gets it from.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. Well, I mean, and that was definitely the ethic, at that time. And yeah. Great. See you tomorrow. Oh man, that's fantastic. Well, we got a lot of our friends are watching, and I want to show this really great photo that I used to advertise the fact that you're going to be here with me today. And this is a picture of you with the Ringling Brothers Circus. So this obviously would have been later. This was after high school and your stint in the Air Force, right?
Yeah, I went right from the Air Force to Ringling Brothers, so it's kind of like going from one circus to the other. And then, but I want you to notice, okay, so like my dad's not really playing the horn. That's my father behind me, and he's not really playing the horn in my ear. It was, for photographic purposes only. But
Okay.
I want you, what I do want you to notice is that microphone, right?
Yes.
That
Yep.
overhead mic. Okay, so for 2 years, that was the only sound reinforcement on the drums for almost 1,100 shows. So
Even the bass drum, nothing, no microphone for the bass drum.
nothing.
Okay.
So imagine playing, which we did. We did 11 weeks at Madison Square Garden, doing 2 to 3 shows a day, 3 hours a pop, playing for 3 rings. And, each ring has got its own act. Each act has got its own ego. And so if they don't hear the cymbal crash or a rim shot in the appropriate place, they get a little pissy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's still some acts waiting to hear the cymbal crash and rim shot, because it's like New York, we had a 22-piece band, playing those shows, and I had to pick up everything, and
Yeah.
you learn how to anticipate when the tricks were going to happen. And I had good eyesight then. Now, John, when did you dye your hair blonde?
Yeah. I know. Oh man. Well, I want to keep talking about this, but I do want to acknowledge a friend that's watching right now, a really good friend of both of ours, Jim Catalano,
Jimmy,
and talk about another icon and legend in the drum industry. And he said, Rick Drumm, the real deal, great journey as a drummer. Absolutely. And you guys, and I want to take this moment where Jim, I was going to mention Jim, because when I got into the business, you and Jim Catalano and our friend, the late great Steve Edelson, and Joe Hibbs, you guys were, a couple of years ahead of me. And I really looked up to all you guys as mentors in the business, and until I got to know you all. And then of course that changed, but no, no, I'm being very serious. And I'm glad Jim is here to hear me say that you guys are, I look at you and Jim and Steve, but the career that you and Jim have had, all these years, you were like the bridge between that other generation, the Jew-Ops, the Lenny, the Lloyd, uh, the, the Jim Coffins, and all those guys before you. And it's, I look at the legacy that you still have, but you've left to the drum industry, and it's amazing. It really is. It's amazing.
yeah, Jim and I went through a lot together through the years, and he
Yeah.
had his hands full at Ludwig, and I had my hands full with other companies.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. And yeah, I know. And Jim, man, 35 years at Ludwig, and I think if you're if you're 25 years old and play Ludwig drums right now, you should thank Jim Catalano, because he's the guy that kept the lights on for a lot of years. I don't know, no offense meant to anybody there, but yeah,
100%,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
Um,
Jim, if I can interrupt just for a second,
yeah, no, please, yeah,
I'm looking at Paul Quinn, name there, and so Paul and I do some things together with the Sessions, which is a fantastic organization. But he's asking me to tell a story,
okay,
right? And so this occurred. I was 16 years old, and I was playing the Moscow Circus first U.S. tour. And it was the last, I played the last 2 cities of the tour, which was Springfield, Massachusetts, and Troy, New York. And so we had a Russian conductor that came in. My father hired the band, and we had like a 6.5, 7 hour rehearsal to go through this show, because he didn't speak any English, and he had a translator who didn't know anything about anything about music. So anyway, we're playing this one show, and unlike the ring circus, we had 3 rings. This was a European style circus with one single ring with one act at a time. So the conductor wanted me to be able to see everything. He put me right in front of the band, and he was in front of me. And then the saxophone section and the trombone section and the trumpet section, the bass player were all behind me, which, by the way, I think every band should be set up that way. So
Yeah.
I'm playing this, it was called the Still Trapeze. The 3 guys up there doing their flips and tricks and everything. And I'm playing, you know, ba-dee-dee-da-da-da, shada-bing, da-da-da, bada-boom, right? And I'm playing the act, and then all of a sudden the trumpet section drops out, and I'm still playing, and then the trombone section stops playing, and now it's a drum solo, and it shouldn't be a drum solo. And I look behind me, and there are 2 bears fighting where the trombone section used to be. The bears are on long leashes. A lot of good that did, but they were queued up behind a blue curtain behind the trumpet section, and I don't know, they got into a tiff over billing or something. I don't know, but they got into it. And so now the thing that bothered me, you know, is that the whole band is lined up on the side watching all of this takes place. And nobody says anything to me, including my father and my brother.
Oh my God.
I'm still in therapy over this. I hope to, you know, conclude soon, but you know.
Oh, so and that was not part of Ringling Brothers. That was that was a different circus. That was
Right, that was the Moscow Circus.
Moscow Circus. Okay, yeah.
Right. And then with the Ringling show in New York, we had a couple issues where we had, again, we were in Madison Square Garden. They took the ice off. The Rangers were going to go out on the road. They weren't having a great year. And then all of a sudden they got hot, and they unexpectedly make the playoffs. Now they got to come back to New York, and they put the ice back in. And Urban and Kenneth Feld didn't want to give up the matinee, so they just had them put the mats and everything right on top of the ice, the rubber mats.
Oh my gosh.
No barrier. So we're playing the opening, which was like, you know, and I'm playing a gal, right? And then as soon as these 3 horse troops hit those mats, and like there's 3 or 4 or 5 horses with each one of those troops, with a guy standing on the back of them doing tricks. I mean, the horse is over there, the rider's over there. It's like 12, 15 of these things go down, and I'm just going bada bing, bada boom, bing, 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 like it's all part of the show. So,
Oh my God. Well, I got to say, and how many years did you do Ringling Brothers and all these circus jobs?
okay,
Roughly.
Ringling show I did for 2 years, 1978 and 79. And then my father did it for about 7 years. And I said, Dad, the guy he had before me had done it for 6 years, and he gave my father a full year's notice. I was in my last year at the Air Force, and he called me up and said, Don's leaving at the end of the year. Would you be interested in doing the gig? And I said, let me think about it. You know. Anyway, the Air Force let me out 3 months early. And then I joined the show, and we traveled 2 years, 1,100 shows.
Wow.
And my opening show with them was in St. Petersburg, and we had Dick Van Dyke as a guest ringmaster. And so I had this timpani, 26-inch timpani that I was using as the floor tom-toms, and also do the glissandos up and down for the axe. And so I'm doing this big timpani roll. Ladies and gentlemen, Dick Van Dyke. And I hit the cymbal, and the cymbal stand explodes. Cymbal hits the timpani down on the floor. And then I hear cut, because we were doing a TV show for CBS. That was my first gig.
Oh man, I it's too bad they didn't have iPhones back then. We'd be able to watch all this stuff on YouTube now. Blooper reels. Well, I mean, I met um, just not long after I met you. Well, a few years later, working for Zildjian, I met George Hooks, who our good friend, who I know you know very well, and I know you helped him get started. And first time I saw him play with the Brothers Circus, it blew my mind. And I know you cut your teeth doing that gig too, and that's has to be the hardest gig or one of the hardest gigs. I mean, other than like playing a Broadway show or something, it's that same caliber of technique and ability you have to have.
Yeah, yeah, you got to know, many different styles of playing, and you know, you, I can still roll for probably 3 or 4 days. That's about all I can do anymore. But I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't leave you.
Now, were you living in had you moved to LA yet when you had done that? When you were still living on the East Coast or Springfield or
Yeah, I was living down in Florida,
in
uh,
Florida? Okay.
and then we moved out to California. After it was about 2 years after I got off the show, we moved out to LA. So it was 1981. I moved out there and had a newborn daughter
Hmm. Yep.
and needed a gig. So fortunately, when I was doing the show, I had gotten endorsements with Zildjian, Ludwig, and um, Remo. And so Remo was sending me heads to test because, I'm literally playing 40 hours a week plus, and it was ideal. And I had to play loud. I had to really play hard. And so they send me heads. I write up the reports, send them back heads. They send me more heads. That's how I kind of got my big toe in the door. Then when I
Mm.
moved out to LA, I needed a job, and they were going through the pre-tune drum stuff, just getting started. They needed
Yep.
somebody in customer service. And so I had, I knew some part of the business because I grew up inside my dad's music store. And so I got started there. And it was one hell of a ride because, my goal was to become a studio drummer. And then when I actually got into LA, I found out that there was about 10 guys that were doing all the studio work, and I didn't see my name on the list. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit of a letdown, but anyway.
A little bit. Can I just say I moved out there in '85, and I had the same problem, Rick, except I was like, that much lower than you on the totem pole as far as my abilities. So I never had a shot. I just wanted to say that you actually had a shot. There were just a lot of guys that had already kind of got there before you. But
But what happened was at Remo, I became unexpectedly, no game plan here at all, totally mesmerized, enthralled with all things business, manufacturing, product development, the artist relations stuff, all of it. And so I just immersed myself in that. And Remo saw that, and then he started giving me, little tasks to do. And then when I could do that, okay, he
mhm.
comes up to me one day.
Wow. So you were in your late 20s at that mid to late 20s at
Yeah,
that
so
point.
yeah, I was about 25.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and this was the early '80s, and that was such a great time in the industry because it was still thriving in terms of the business, but it was still small. So I could see you coming in there and just really rising through the ranks quickly because you're a hard worker and stuff. You're a smart guy, and it all make so. I mean, within a relatively short amount of time, you really rose through the ranks at Remo.
Yeah, and a lot of it had to do with not waiting for permission to do stuff. I just saw stuff that needed to be done. I just do it. If I screw it up, I'd ask for forgiveness later on. You know,
Yeah.
whatever. So But this one day, Remo comes up to me, and we weren't doing really any clinics at the time. And, we had the pre-tuned drum sets that we were trying to get on the market. And Remo said, "Hey, Rick, let me talk to you. I think we should do a clinic." I said, "Remo, that's a great idea." I said, who do you want to have on?" He said, "I think we should have Louis Bellson, Billy Cobham, and Vic Firth." I said, "Oh, wow, man, what a great lineup." And I said, "So, where?" He said, "I think we should do it in New York City." I said, "Oh, that's going to be fantastic." I said, when are we going to do it?" He said, 30 days, put it together.
I knew you.
It was just like that, right? So I'd only been to one drum clinic in my life, and that was seeing Roy Burns do a clinic in West Springfield, Massachusetts at Falsetti Music. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I knew the format, so I knew I had to, number one, get a date that all three guys could do it. I got that. Then I got the location, which was at the Sheridan Center, Midtown. And I'm explaining to the people in the city government what a drum clinic was, and because I'm trying to find this location. Anyways, they lined me up with that, and then I knew I had to get people there, so I handmade these posters and sent them out to like Manny's and Sam Ash and Terminal
Wow.
Music, right? Percussion Center, right? And then because I had been a member of Local 802, the musicians union, they used to have an answering service. We had those things, right? And I said, "Look, I want to leave a message for all the drummers in the local that on this date we're going to have Louis Bells and Billy Collins for." And so then we get out there. Oh, I did one other thing, and Remo didn't know this. I asked Remo's secretary for Remo's Rolodex, and for all of you in the audience who don't know what a Rolodex is, it's a bunch of 6x5 cards. It was a very technical thing.
Very technical.
You had to know the alphabet. All right. So anyway, what I did was I called everybody whose name I recognized in New York. Right. So I called Max Roach. I called Elvin Jones. I called Mel Lewis. I called these guys and said, "Remo would like to personally invite you to come to this event with Louis and Billy." Okay. So Remo and I get out to New York, and then he's got something to do. There's the night before. I got to set up everything. And he says, "Hey, look, Louis coming in. Can you take him out to dinner?" I said, "Yeah, sure, but I don't have a credit card. I didn't have a credit card back then." And Remo says to me, "Well, I'll take my card. I can use this?" I said, "Yeah." All right. So Louis wanted to go to this Italian restaurant, and big shocker there. And then
Right.
we get a bottle of wine, and then some pasta, no big deal. But then I get the bill. And the bill to me looks like it's a lot of money. And Louis sees my concern. He says, "Rick, you want me to get that for you?" I said, No, this is on Remo. I said, "Yeah, I'm Mr. Big Shot here." All right, so I give him the card, and next morning Remo sees me. He said, "How'd it go with dinner with Louis?" I said, "It went fine, but I don't know what happened, Remo. Things got a little out of hand, and I apologize and whatever." He said, "Well, how much was the meal?" I said, $65. And he did what you just did. He started laughing hysterically. I didn't get $65 in my life.
Oh man, yeah.
So then we did the event, and like everybody I called showed up, including Max. And the only guy that couldn't make it, and he told me he couldn't make it, was Alvin because he's going on the road. But everybody else showed up, and so Remo pulled me aside and said, "So, what the hell did you do to get all these people here? Right? There hasn't been this collection of drummers since the 50s and 52nd Street or whatever." And I told him what I did step by step, and then I was artist relations manager. So,
That's, by the way, Remo, that's my new title. And I want a credit card.
yes.
Wow. No, and that was early on. That was like early into your time at Remo, right? I mean, just
Yeah, that was I think 19. It's either 82 or 83, somewhere in there.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I when I met you in '85, I mean, I remember it was when I think I'd met you before that, but when I moved out there, I remember I put that up on Facebook. There's a great picture, thanks to Lissa Wales, our dear friend, from PASIC '85 in LA, with you surrounded by Terry Bozzio and Vinny, and I think Josh
I
Freeze.
can never get rid of these guys. They're following me everywhere.
No, but I mean, you were just right in it, just instantly. You were entrenched in the scene, and I think what's great about your career is that you obviously Remo recognized in you that you could do a lot more than what you were doing in artist relations, which was a lot because Remo had a lot of artists to look after. That wasn't an easy job just in itself, but you took on marketing and later sales and marketing, being in charge of all that. And I mean, how did that evolution, how
Well,
did that sort of evolve?
well, first of all, I mean, I just want to acknowledge that I had a great team of people,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
every organization that I was with. So, I mean, at Remo, I mean, I had George Barrett, who eventually became president of Innovative. And then Ken Austin was there. And then we had Dick Marcus, right? And so
Great guy. Yeah.
Dick and I were kind of like Abbott and Costello there. And it was a great team. It really was. And that's how all of that happened. And then we had, moving on. I mean, like, going as I was kind of going up the ladder, so to speak. Um, I could count on the team to do what they needed to do. It's kind of like Bill Belichick, just do your job, and they did. They were great, and it was a great team to develop stuff with. We had a lot of fun. It was kind of a golden era for I think the percussion industry in general,
Yeah.
and so we just had a lot of fun doing what we were doing.
Yeah. I think that sums it up perfectly, Rick. It was a golden era. And I think, you guys at Remo and you and Dick, especially, you guys were a great team. I remember spending a lot of time with you guys, and two really smart guys that were drummers, taking chances and kind of writing the rules as you went along in many ways too. I mean, when you guys started making the drums, I just want to show this photo to everybody if they haven't seen it. There's Rick with Terry Bozzio. That's Vinny with his to Terry's left, and that's a young Josh Freeze right there, 12 years old at the time. That's Tony Brock, who was playing with Rod Stewart at that time, but he, of course, is famous for playing with the Babies. I don't know who this is. Could be Jim Keltner. I don't know. It was all those guys were there at PASIC '85. I remember, I'd moved out there a few months before, and I lost my mind, seeing them all in one place. You know? Like, oh my God. Yeah. Anyway, that's a great photo. Again, thanks to Lissa. And here's another great photo. I just want to show this one. This is, and I'm guessing, Rick, maybe you can tell me, was this from the NAMM show when Toto played at the big party
No,
in 90?
it was before that. This
It was before that.
um, it was a big performance that we did at Royce Hall at UCLA.
Okay. Yeah.
And so what we wanted to show was we had everybody play their own branded kits. So Jeff was on Pearl, and I can't remember what Mark was on. And then I think Virgil played on Remo, and then it's Jacob Arman.
Yeah.
And then we had Vinny was playing Yamaha, and we had oh shoot, what was the drummer? I'm having a mental block at one of the guys, and I think Sonny Emery might have been there. I think Ricky Lawson might have been there, and so
Mhm.
I hired the Brandon Fields band as the house band, and everybody played a tune, and then I said to everybody, I didn't want to create a big drumming shootout at the OK Corral. I said, play a solo, but play it within a musical context, and like I'm Quincy Jones or something. But I just said, play. I don't want a big drawn out thing, right? I don't want a giant drum battle. And Jeff said, no problem. I'm not going to play any solo at all. I said, well, you got to do something.
That was Jeff that said that. You said Jeff, yeah.
Yeah, give me something. Can you give me 8 bars? Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't do drum solos, man.
Yeah, that's right. which he did. He was Jeff was a good guy. He
Great
said,
guy.
give me 8.
Wow, man. I mean, just classic photos, and thanks to Lissa for capturing these. But yeah. So and talking about Remo drums, and I know you were there for that. That was around 85, 86 when you guys started making.
Yeah, well, we were doing the PTS kits going
Right.
back as early as '82,
Right. Right.
and then what happened? um, Pearl made the decision that they were going to start making drum heads, and we had been the supplier of Pearl drum heads on an OEM basis,
Mhm.
and so Remo was not thrilled with that idea, and he said, "Well, if Pearl's going to go away, we're just going to start making our own drum heads. I mean, our own drum sets." And I said, "Excuse me." So that's when we started to make the regular tunable drums. We had the Master Touch kit, and which was a good kit.
Yeah.
And then we got we got Terry on the kit. We had Ndugu, we had Sonny Emery for a minute, and we had Ricky Lawson and a bunch of jazz guys on the kits, and which was good. And then we started to have some quality issues with the shells breaking down a little bit, especially around the bearing edges. This actually, I mean, I don't know, I should tell this story, but hell, I'm telling it. Everybody. All right, so, and I had finally reached my point in the quality issues at that time, and I went into Remo. His office was right up across the hall from me, and I said, Remo, we got to fix this, right? And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to stop. I want us to stop manufacturing the drums until we fix the problem. He said, so what do you want to do? You want to shut it down? I said, yes. He said, you mean to tell me that you're going to go over and talk to Danny Torres, who was the supervisor over there, to stop and send everybody home? I said, yes, until we fix it. And he said, there's a couple of expletives in there, but then he said, well, go do it. And so I did. And I went over to Danny. I said, Danny, we're going to shut it down. He said, what? We're going to send everybody home. It's going to be all hands on deck until we fix this thing. And our development guy that we had hired, Herbie May, who's still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome guy. Got together with Herbie and the team. And you know what? We fixed that thing really within a week. And we got it fixed. And then we got everything going again. But
Yeah.
that's what was required. And that actually allowed us to then go up to building all the hand percussion and all that stuff that we got into in the later years. But I couldn't believe that at the time that Remo said, well, you go do it. And I did. And I think he was surprised.
I think he was too. Yeah, I think he was too. But you're right. I remember that being a period where you guys, I mean, you really turned a corner as far as the products that you were making. I mean, from the PTS drums, I remember those, and then the regular drums, and like you said, all the hand percussion stuff. It just, it really things really started to blossom beyond, the great drum heads that the company was known for. So
yeah, it was again, it was a great team, and I see Teres put up there Lloyd's name, Lloyd McCarthy.
yes,
And Lloyd's the guy that brought me in to Remo, really, and I owe him everything. And we were friends for life after that. Yeah, we had a couple ups and downs with the promotions and stuff, but we stayed in touch. We used to go visit him out at his place in Cape Cod.
hmm
brought the
Yeah.
kids out there, go to do the lobster thing,
Lloyd was absolutely one of the great ones, as was, of course, Teresa's dad,
Oh,
Lenny
right.
DiMuzio.
All right, so I got to tell this story, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
this is Pasek, San Antonio. Do you remember that?
I don't know if I was at the San Antonio.
All
This
right.
would have been mid 80s probably, or late 80s.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Betsy and I were living in San Antonio, so yeah. I'm not saying, yeah, we were in San Antonio. So actually, no, this would have been 90, right around 92, I think. 90.
Oh, okay. Then I was, yeah, I would have been there. Okay.
All right, so
This
that,
wasn't like TMEA. It was a PASIC.
I'm pretty sure it was basic because
Okay.
Armin was there, and I mean, everybody's percussion team was there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
anyway, Betsy's a great cook, my wife, and so we had invited all these people over, including Lenny, Lloyd, Jim Coffin, Steve Edelson, John King, Gary Mann, who was our sales manager in England, and perhaps a couple others. And what happened was, Lloyd showed up with this big old case, like, something you would see. Oh, my wife just put 1992, 93.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Betsy.
thank you, Betsy. All right, so we're having this big dinner party, and a few weeks before, Herbie May thought it'd be funny. He found this, the blow up doll.
Yeah.
And he sends it to me in a bass drum pedal box. And, so I was, oh, we must have a new pedal. I open up, oh, okay. So I said, what the hell am I going to do with this? So I put it up in the closet. And now I got, the three musketeers there, the three Jew-ops with Lloyd and Lenny and Coffin. I said, I know how to get rid of this doll. So Betsy and I, we go into the room and then we start blowing up this damn doll. Right? By the way, that's a lot of effort.
Yeah, it
Not that
sure
I've done
is.
it a lot, but it was,
Oh my God.
So then I had a Zildjian T-shirt. We got the Zildjian T-shirt on her, and then some sunglasses and a hat. And Betsy grabbed one arm, and I grabbed the other, and we went out to the dining room and presented her to Lenny. So, of course, that the whole trajectory of the party
Yeah.
changed. And then I had to drive these guys back to the hotel down by the Riverwalk, and then the doorman comes out, and we had a Volvo wagon, and he opens up the door, and then there's the doll spread out on Lloyd's suitcase, and Lloyd goes back and he says, "Excuse me, I got to get my date." And then Lenny grabs one arm, Lloyd grabs the other. They go to check in because Lloyd hadn't checked in yet. And they're standing there with the doll at the check-in thing, at like the Hyatt, the Hilton, whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm watching these guys. They walk her all the way over to the elevator. Big crowd in front of the elevator. Somebody turns around and goes, "Oh my God." And then it was like Moses parting the Red Sea. Everybody was giving them plenty of room, and they got right on the elevator. And then a few weeks later, when I get back, I called, what was Lenny's assistant name? Was it?
Oh, Annette Mackimo. Yeah. Annette.
Yeah, Annette. So I called Annette, and I said, is Lenny available? And she said, no, Rick, he's not available right now. I said, okay, well, please let him know I called. Well, let me tell you why he's not available. Because the doll that you gave Lenny apparently has sprung a couple of leaks, and Lenny and John King are in the testing room performing emergency surgery.
I vaguely remember this. I wasn't there for the dinner party, but we did actually do work there. I swear we did. We actually did do stuff. Oh, but we had a lot of fun, man. Wow. Wow. Well, I remember one time at the drum corps finals, and it was Lenny, you, George Barrett, and myself, the four of us. And I won't get into some of the antics that we did to a friend of ours. But I do remember we were invited to Harvey Vogel's house for dinner.
Yes.
The four of us were just sort of hanging a lot those few days, and it was in Texas. And we'd gone to dinner a few times, and we were like, well, we really should go to Harvey's. He's an important customer. Anybody watching, Harvey was the owner of Lone Star Percussion, which is a big dealer for Zildjian and Remo and everybody. So we knew that it was, I think we wanted to be backed for something, but in any case, we thought it would be good to go to Harvey's house. So we went, and it turns out he had this great spread. You remember, you go in there and there's lots of people there, lots of great food everywhere, and we had a really, really nice night. And I remember it got to be that time we were getting ready to leave, and we thanked Harvey and we said, "Thank you. We had a great time. Thanks for inviting us." And we do you remember this? We stepped out onto the porch, and Harvey came with us, closed the door, and just unloaded on all of us. One by one. Me because of something with Zildjian drumsticks, you because of something that had happened with some defective heads, and Lenny for I don't know what, but it was just like well, there's no such thing as a free dinner. But
No, that was an expensive meal, as it turned out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Tom Meyer said if Harvey asked, you had to go. Absolutely right, Tom. And but anyway, it's probably only funny to Rick and myself, but I just remember us thinking we'd left and had a great time. We left unscathed, basically, and we no sooner set foot on the front porch, and let me tell you what's wrong with your company, and boom, boom, boom. Oh, anyway. Well, so I want to just kind of keep the timeline moving here. So I know there was a stop in between. At a point, you left Remo to go work for a distributor, Midco,
Midco
and yeah, and that was for a couple of years. And you were
3 years. I worked at Midco, and they were the fifth largest musical instrument accessory distributor in the States. And I learned a lot there. I went to India for the first time. And
well, yeah,
that was an education. And then, went to Vietnam to go look at a new guitar manufacturing operation. It was before they had most favored nations status, and that was an experience. And
I'll bet.
so anyways, I learned a lot there. I went in as the CEO, and then I'm at a PASIC in Phoenix, and I was there because we were importing this line of djembes from Ghana called, what was it called? Doesn't matter. Anyway, so Kambala. And then I go to the show because I'm the only one in the company, even though I'm a CEO, that knows anything about this stuff. So I leave the booth, I go to get a cup of coffee, and I'm coming back with my cup of coffee, walking down the aisle, and then Vic pops out from the booth and just says, "Vic, how you doing? Rick, let me hit you with something out of left field. How would you like to come be president of my company, run the company?" It was just like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, "Well, maybe we could get a room, talk about it, dinner." Anyway, we eventually put that deal together. It took about a year because I had Midco in the middle of some transitions, and then I went to work for Vic for the next 10 years.
I remember you stopping by at our office. You visited us, and I remember myself and Jerry Donegan and Colin Schofield, and we were all kind of standing there chatting. And I think I said, "So Rick, what are you doing in town?" Or you're. I was thinking you're visiting family. You said, "Well, actually, I'm going to be president of Vic Firth. I'm starting next week or something." And you did it with that typical, very deadpan face that it could be a punchline of a joke, or it could be really serious. And you're like, "No, really, I'm going to be." And I remember thinking like, "Wow, okay, so yeah, congratulations." And that was a big. Well, I was going to say 95 was the year I remember Vic got inducted into the Hall of Fame that year in Phoenix. That was a big show for him. So I wondered that. So it took almost another year or so for that to finally
Yeah, yeah, to
transpire. Yeah.
transpire, and then Betsy and I moved to we first moved in. I think it was Westwood that we moved into. We rented a glass house.
Right, right. I remember you had a Christmas party or something one year, and it was owned by a radio personality,
Mike,
right? I think.
yeah, Mike Glick, I think was his name or something like that. Something Glick.
Yeah. Okay.
He had a talk show.
Right. Or was it Larry Glick?
Larry Glick, you got it.
Larry Glick. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah. And so yeah, so Vic for about 10 years or so, and that was more like you say, that was in a much higher level position than. I mean, I guess you were probably by the time you left Remo close to that position, but you were the president of Vic Firth. You were really kind
Yeah,
of running it day to day. Yeah.
yeah, and Vic had bought that company about a year and a half. The factory that where we were making the sticks about a year and a half before I joined the company. And so, we're taking that factory through a big transition. And then we had the pepper mills and the rolling pins and then the beater bars for the vacuum cleaners for like Electrolux and Braun. So I had to learn all those businesses. And basically, John, what we did, we were really good at taking squares and making really good circles. That's what we did.
Yeah. I think so. I think so. I mean, that company really transformed, and I mean, again, there's a great team there. I
It was
give.
awesome. We had, of course, Kelly, Tracy, you had Neil Larrabee, you had Chuck Moulton, we had Joe Vasco,
Yeah, yeah, great.
and then Mark Dyke, and so yeah, it was a great team, and we got a lot done, and it was
Yeah, yeah,
dynamic than the other companies. Each company that I joined had its own personality. Some a little more easygoing than others, but even when you got into the maybe some friction, always some good things came out of it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting trying to manage all of that.
It's not easy. No, it's not easy. And
Crazy.
then, and then basically after that period, you were, recruited, for lack of a better term, by the D'Addario family, who at that time they
Yeah,
weren't Promark yet, but they were Evans drum heads, and
yeah, they bought Evans in '95, and so yeah, I got a call from a recruiter asking if I'd be interested in uh, becoming president of D'Addario. And I wasn't looking to move, but I was that last year at Vic. I was working on my first year of my MBA at Babson, and actually, I should mention I didn't go to college till I was 47, so I was about halfway through Vic, and that's when I got was working
yeah,
on my undergrad. Then I got that, and then my last year at Vic, working at going to school at Babson, and then I got hired by D'Addario, and then became finishing my second year of my MBA while trying to learn D'Addario in my first year. And so focus was really important.
yes, I would think so. I would think so. So what were some of the I have to think, coming from your background at Remo, manufacturing, and getting to Vic, I'm sure there were a lot of, Remo certainly had it down in terms of manufacturing, but Vic had gotten to a point with that factory, I think, where, the level of manufacturing was pretty superior, different product, obviously. And then to D'Addario, were there similarities or big differences, or
There are some big differences. I mean, when I go back to Remo, and I've thought about this a lot, Remo was more about innovation and developing uh, new products, making sure we had something new all the time. So sometimes they were a hit and sometimes they weren't. And then moving to okay, the Midco was a whole different thing as a distribution house. But we grew the company a lot by changing our sales model and all of that. And then when I got to Vic, there was no, he didn't see any ceiling, right? I mean, you know that as well as I do. I mean, Vic was, let's just go for it, right? You know, and so he gave people, as did I, you know, certain latitude. You know, we brought in a friend that we both had that just passed, Marco Sicoli, you know, and you know, when you Marco was a unique individual that made things happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes it required to clean up on aisle 2, but he made things happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it was kind of a magical time. And then, I would say with D'Addario, I became president of D'Addario, and again, great crew, Jim D'Addario and John D'Addario III, who's now CEO, and John was senior VP at the time, and we had Rob D'Addario, and then I had a great team, just all around great. We had all of our engineering was in house. It was huge. Eventually, we had like a 50-person marketing department at D'Addario because we were designing. We had our own printing presses in house.
I remember that. Yeah.
We designed all our package. Most of our packaging was done in house, and all of our catalogs, all that stuff was done in house. And so we had a recording studio upstairs. We had photography studios, video, all of it in house. And then we were trying to hire people to creatives to come out from Brooklyn to Farmingdale, and that was difficult to do because in their mind that was kind of like being sentenced to Siberia to come all the way out to Farmingdale.
Yeah.
So we ended up opening up a marketing office in Brooklyn, and that kind of solved at least a piece of it. And I think they opened up another one after that.
Yeah. And I made a note, and I meant to mention this too. What I found interesting was, just in terms of the size of the body count, so to speak, as you say, like going from, I don't know how many people worked at Midco, but going from Remo, which I think of as even at that time, a pretty big company with a lot of hands on deck.
We had about 150, couple hundred people at Remo maybe. And then, Vic, when I first joined Vic, we were at about 120, and then we brought it down a little bit. And then D'Addario, when I walked into the door, was right around 1,000.
Yeah.
Of which at the time 600 of them were based in Long Island, and then the others were like we owned Rico Reeds, so we had a group of about 100 out in California, and they had about another 125 that were in the plantations where we grew the cane in France and also Argentina.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that.
We opened up our own distribution, and then we got into lean manufacturing. We did a big lean initiative, which a lot of good things happened, where we reduced our inventories by as much as $10 million. We were able to, before lean, order in by Monday, we'd go out maybe Wednesday. Or after lean, order in on Monday by 5 o'clock was going out Monday. And so that changed buying patterns. It changed a lot of stuff at the company, and our defect rate dropped considerably, and all of that money, goes to the bottom line, which allows us to, pay down debt, go out and do an acquisition. So we went out and we bought. First acquisition we did while I was there was Pure Sound, which was a small one, and then after that was ProMark.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, in terms of the numbers, when you said like Vic had 120, probably a lot of that was the factory workers, right? A lot of that was in and same with D'Addario, like you said, because I think of Vic at the time, the mid 90s, the office they had in Dedham at the time was Kelly and Tracy and Vic and all the other folks you mentioned, a sort of medium-sized office that,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that produced a lot of great work. You know, you could really do a lot with a lot of people,
One of my
a
favorite
few
things,
people rather.
Vic and I shared a wall, between our offices. And then Joe Vasco was then at the other end. And like a few nights a week, this is what I get at 5 o'clock. Hey, it's 5 o'clock. All right. So that was the secret code for it's time to come over and have a little pop of scotch.
I heard about this. Yeah, it's the
Just,
little things. Yeah,
just
yeah,
so. Um, but those were also magical times because Vic had so many stories, and so when you get was relaxed and yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah.
still got to go play the gig at this, the BSO. But that's when he would tell us the stories about he and Harold Farberman, locking the door on Arthur Fiedler so he couldn't come out to get his encore, hold the door closed, all kinds of stuff. You know some of those stories, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. I heard some. Yeah, he was definitely a jokester in his younger days. Oh, that's great. Um, yeah. So and as you say, D'Addario, for people who aren't aware of, they have many brands, as you say, Evans drum heads. Of course, their strings, their picks, their the Rico reeds, and
Yeah, so
um,
what was an interesting experience was all of a sudden when I joined D'Addario, right now, Remo, he and I were fairly close, um, was not happy with my
no, I
ending at D'Addario because of the Evans thing. And so that was a little tense for a while. And then when we bought ProMark, now I found myself competing against two companies that I was involved with their growth, right, for a
yeah.
number, right? And so it was a little, had a little stress, a little tension in there. But I think all in all, we got through it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, that's a that's a tough situation. It is. It's a tough situation that um it's because it's such a small industry that we're in that that's sadly that's bound to happen. We both know friends of ours that have moved throughout the industry that, real head-to-head competition with, the new company they're working for competing with the company they just left and your situation I think in those situations, it sort of evolved to that, but it wasn't a direct, you moved from here to there to do that. And in my last company, I had to sign a non-compete. So there would be none of that for me. But
Well, yeah, in mine, they said that I had to sign it, don't show up again. So I see Tim Smith is on here too, right? So
yes,
Tim and I worked together at Remo. He was part of the A team for sure.
I remember. Yeah, I remember when Tim moved out to LA. I've known Tim, gosh, forever and ever. Great drummer. And I remember he was working with you guys for a bit out there. And yeah, I know. A lot of our old friends are watching. Well, so let's move along. So in 2014, you moved on from D'Addario. And I know that situation was you sort of knew that your time there had a shelf life, right? Because you were there to mentor and basically groom the
Yeah,
next
when
generation.
I mean it was I think April of 2013 when J3 and I were named as co-presidents, and I saw the handwriting on the wall, and it wasn't in crayon. It was
That's usually a sign.
so anyway. It was time. I mean, J3 was definitely ready,
Yeah.
and so it was time for me to move on. And then I had hired a business coach for J3 and me, and I got a lot of good out of it, as did he. And then we made it available to the entire leadership team. And I thought to myself, whenever this gig comes to an end, then I think I want to check out coaching.
Mm.
And so that's what I did. And so I became a business coach, doing just one-on-one. And then I'd gotten involved with this coaching organization called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which I did for 7 years, and coaching all different kinds of companies. Now, I had a couple of companies in the music industry. I mean, Sabian was a client, still is. They
Yep.
were my first client. And then we had I had pharmacies, and I got a client now that manufactures different products for nuclear aircraft carriers and submarines, and so we have different conversations. But
Yeah.
but the thing is that I work with the business owners and their leadership teams, helping them get to wherever they want to go with their organization and their growth, achieving whatever numbers they want to achieve, and helping their team develop. And so since leaving, I've coached about 65 different companies in a wide range of industries. And I love it because I learn something new all the time. And the thing that I also enjoy doing is that the first time I meet with a new client, I say, okay, by show of hands, how many people in this room have been pissed on by a lion or tiger or charged by an elephant? Just me? Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. So
That's a really good icebreaker.
it is, yeah. So I said, look, the reason I'm telling you this is that I've seen things, I've experienced things. There's not too much you guys can do that's going to surprise me. So let's just be honest with each other from the get-go.
That's
Let's not,
great.
you know.
Yeah, that's great, man. And so, Rick, how many people, how big a staff do you have to be able to do these, to conduct these seminars? These,
Oh, okay, so let me
like, how
think.
does that work?
Yeah, no. So you're looking at them.
So but are you a one man show to do all this?
Yeah, I'm
You
an
are.
army of one. However, now recently though, I've just been doing the coaching, right,
Yeah.
and helping them with strategy and all that stuff. So then, this towards the beginning of this past year or this year, I started. I had peak leadership teams, and I said, okay, here's the concept. I got peak growth solutions, and then our peak growth solutions. I got what I do, the coaching, and then I license. I got 700 micro courses that are covering communication, customer service, sales, HR, marketing, on and on. And we have, so that's peak micro learning. And then I have a guy that I coached to become a coach, who was originally an aircraft design engineer for Embraer, and I've done in Brazil. And then he moved up to Toronto and did the same thing for Bombardier. And then he started his own consulting thing. The guy's expert on theory of constraints, process streamlining, process development. And then he introduced me to another guy that had a similar career path, only he was VP at Embraer for supply chain and procurement and customer experience. So he had VP of those three areas. And so now I got peak customer experience. So the other one was peak productivity design, peak customer experience. And then I've got a colleague by the name of Angelo Biasi, who you may know because Angelo
I
was
know that
involved
name.
with Intune magazine.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I do know that name. Yeah.
With Erwin Kornfeld. Angelo went and got his MBA at MIT, and then he started doing a little teaching at. I was going to say, "Holy crap! I got something coming in." All right, so then he started an education technology company,
Yep.
and he sold it, and then he just bought it back. And he's got a great approach to teaching AI. And so he's working on some really, really big things, both in the business world and also in education. So his approach is in the process of being adopted by some really, really big players. I'm not allowed to say names right now, but
Got it.
I hope he remembers me one day. And then I got the last piece is peak exit strategies.
Right. Okay.
Not
No,
that
I
things get ready for sale, and like I just had a group of six actually, that were under this private equity umbrella, and they were just recently sold. And I got a couple others that are selling, and I got a couple others that are in big acquisition mode.
I'm blown away, Rick, that I just assumed. I remember when you started doing it. I remember chatting with you at a NAM show, right? Not long after you'd started the business, and you had like a room down in the main floor. I feel like you had like a meeting area at the NAM show many years ago. Am I imagining that?
Oh, no, no, no. I did.
Or
I got the bills to prove it. And
yeah,
so,
right. You're still paying for it. Yeah.
and but the thing is, where some industries are very proactive in investing in their people and training, others not so much. And unfortunately, the music industry is one of those that is a little behind on the curve.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. No, I understand. And you answered a question I was going to ask right from the beginning, which is this something you had thought about? And I'm guessing, with how your career had evolved through the years, and it was the next logical place for you to go, really, with this would be to have your own business and basically share what you've learned in 33 years in the industry and just in business, really, not just the drum industry, but
yeah,
uh,
yeah, it's business is business. The distribution models might be a little different, or whatever approach to retail might be a little different. But the common denominator is people.
yeah, yeah,
And so I get involved in change management. I've got a lot of experience with it. And one of the things that I learned, what I learned along the way, John, is the importance of staying on top of everything. So I read 2 to 3 books a month,
wow,
and they're not comic books. No, they're really real books.
real books.
Real books. There's not a lot of pictures, but it takes me a long time. But I get through them.
You get through them.
So I'm dedicated to continual learning. People ask me when I'm going to retire, and then my answer is I have no desire to retire. I mean that's it. I mean I
Yeah,
look at the guys I worked with: Remo, Vic, Lowell Samuel, Midco, right? And they've all gone out, right, working to the end essentially.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the way I want to go. I mean I describe it as, picture me as the ever ready bunny with the bass drum, boom, 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 and then the battery goes dead, then boom. That's the way I want to go.
Well, I I understand the metaphor, but let's not. I don't want to think that way right now, but no, but I totally get it. I know you well enough to know that about you. That yeah, I can't imagine seeing you. Well, I could see you sitting under a palm tree with a drink with an umbrella in it, but only for a few days or a week, and then it's back to work. Whereas it'd be hard to get me off that chair, off that beach chair. once I'm comfortable. But no, I do. I get it. And I want to talk about first a second before we wrap things up. You have a gig tomorrow night.
I
Um,
got a
you're
gig. Yeah, I got a
you're
gig.
still playing. You're still playing drums. And by the way, everybody, I've heard him play, and not surprisingly, he's a mother whater drummer. I mean, great drummer.
Yeah, and for anybody who needs a sub, I mean, I'm available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, whatever.
Yeah, cash money, cash money. Yeah,
Okay, preferred.
Venmo. Yeah, yeah. So, but that's great that you're still you know enjoying that part of your passion in your life.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I got okay. So I'm in my little meeting room here, and then I got my office next door, and the room after that is my drum room. So I have my Gretsch kit set up in there, and then I also have a DW jazz kit, and I have a Yamaha Fusion kit, and then I got the Roland TD20, and behind the Roland TD20, I've got the ads, old ads from the 50s and 60s of my drum teachers that were
Wow.
in, like, Downbeat or,
Yeah.
System Magazine, whatever was going on at the time. And, I owe a lot to a lot of people. I'm very much into acknowledging my mentors, and it's a real long list. And now, I mean, my mentors used to be older than me, and now they're younger than me. I do want to mention, I've written a book. It's got nothing to do with me, because I wanted to sell something. So the book is called Lock In to Unlock Your Focus Power. And so the
Okay.
book is about how much time that we lose because of behaviors or habits. So the average amount of productive work in a day by the average worker in the US out of an 8-hour day, how many hours, John?
It scares me to think of it. I'm going to guess 2 hours.
Not bad. 2.8.
Wow.
2.8, right? So it's like 2.8 to 3.5. So what happens to the rest of the time? Well, it's a lot of distractions, right? So everything from this, and how many
Mhm.
times does
Yep.
the average person check this during the course of a day? Right? At work, it's up to 100 times throughout
Yeah.
the course of the day, especially with a Gen Zer, it's up to like 150, 160 times. So that's a piece of it.
Yeah.
I'm not, being very clear what the expectations are and, what the success look like. So what I teach in the book is really how to get your productivity up without working harder, actually working less, but working smarter.
Great.
It's actually, I'm just putting the finishing touches on it. It should be out.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll definitely we'll put a note in there about it. That's congratulations, Rick. I was going to ask you if there's anything you could pass along to anybody watching this as far as, some basic career advice, just someone who would like to get into the music industry, the drum industry.
I think regardless of industry, I think the big thing is two things, right? And when I talk to college students, even in music, right? I ask them, so what's the number one skill that you have to learn to be successful? And I'll say, well, work hard, do this. But I said, think the one skill. And eventually I have to say, listen,
Yeah. Yeah.
listen first, right? Because you'll be surprised at how much you'll learn just by listening. And then be a continuous learner, be curious, and take some risks, right? And be open. I think, like I really wanted to be a studio drummer. And if anybody's listening, I'm still available. But I really wanted to be a studio drummer, and but I was open to this other path,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think that it changed, what I did with my life, and it had a big impact on my life, my family's life. We moved around a lot. People ask if we're in the witness protection program, but no, we. It's been great. It's been a great journey, and I'm not done yet. I mean, one of the people that I'm kind of check out now, who's had a career that started late, is the painter Grandma Moses. You familiar with her?
No.
Yeah, seriously, check it out. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Okay.
Real thing. It's a real thing. Right. And so, I mean, she really kind of like hit high gear when she turned 78.
Wow.
Yeah, went into her 90s. So, I'm kind of
Great
like,
example. Yeah.
yeah, thinking Grandma Moses.
All right. Well, it's a great bit of advice. Can happen when you're 78. There's still hope for me. All right. Well, Rick, thank you so much for being here with me today. It's always great to spend time with you. And
Thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate it. I'm really proud to hit the number 230. I didn't want to wait to 231, but episode 230 is that's my episode.
it's a nice round number. Had your name all over it.
That's good, baby.
All right. Well, hang with me for 1 second, Rick. We'll end this stream and say goodbye to everybody. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. A big hand for my buddy, Rick Drumm. And as his business card used to say, Rick Drumm, and I do. Very well, that is. Big hand for Rick. And thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks, Rick. Hang tight.
Thank you.